Took torture to do it, but Republicans today signaled they are ready to be bipartisan. No, of course I don't mean that the way it sounds. Our fourth story tonight, the House Republican leader agrees with Democrats, yes, it was torture, and then says, hey, why don't we have both parties take the hit for it? Congressman John Boehner today first complained that the release of the torture memos was political, and turned around and embraced exactly the word Democrats have been called political for using, calling it, you guessed it, torture.
Last week they released these memos outlining torture techniques.
Torture techniques, according to the House Republican leader. A spokesman later telling Huffington Post, quote, it is clear from the context that Boehner was simply using liberals' verbiage to describe these interrogation techniques. The United States does not torture. Nice try, Boehner. What do you think, the rest of us are all 4 years old? In the same news conference in which Mr. Boehner used the word torture, which the U.S. does not do, to describe what the U.S. did do, Mr. Boehner also tried it repeatedly to drag Democrats onto the torture hot seat by claiming that Democrats were told that waterboarding was taking place and that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi specifically knew about it.
Whether you're talking about the terrorist surveillance programs, whether you're talking about interrogation techniques, whether you're talking about the Treasury program to track this money, all of this information was downloaded to congressional leaders of both parties with no objections being raised. From everything that I understand, she and other leaders were fully briefed on all of these interrogation techniques. There's nothing here that should surprise her.
As Mr. Boehner knows, no objections could be raised. Leaders of Congress are not asked for approval at these meetings. They're told what is going on and then told not to let the door hit them on the way out. They cannot follow up on illegal activity. They cannot even consult staff to find out whether it is illegal. And that is assuming Mr. Boehner is not lying, which Speaker Pelosi implies we should not assume.
We were not, I repeat, not told that waterboarding or any of these other enhanced interrogation methods were used. What they did tell us is that they had some legislative counsel, the Office of Legislative Counsel, opinions that they could be used, but not that they would. And they further the point was that if and when they would be used, they would brief Congress at that time.
We turn now to Chris Hayes, Washington editor of The Nation magazine. Welcome back, sir.
Hey there, Keith.
Let's get the Boehner slip out of the tongue or flash of humanity there out of the way. His spokesman's explanation it makes no sense to me, largely, I think, because I'm already out of preschool. Why would Boehner use the liberal verbiage for torture if Mr. Boehner did not agree with that verbiage?
Well, it takes a lot of mental energy to constantly be lying about what happened, and sometimes you just sort of fall down on the job. I mean, I actually think the most interesting part of that statement was the United States does not torture, because that's actually the kind of tautological response to all this. It's because we do it, ergo, it cannot be torture. It's like saying, you know, John Boehner does not say smart things, so whatever he said, by definition, cannot be smart, right? So there's this defense that, you know, and it actually gets something really deep, I think, in the conservative mindset, which is that the United States is definitionally pure, and any action it takes is therefore pure, and there's a complete unwillingness to look at what actually went on.
Is the answer to this next question as obvious as it would seem at first blush? Why does Mr. Boehner want America to think that Pelosi and the other Democrats signed off on the waterboarding?
It's really interesting. Well, they're scared, frankly. I mean, they are scared. And the fact of the matter is the law was broken. I mean, there was a really deeply evil thing that went on. But also, it violated domestic law and it violated international law. And I think the people in the CIA are certainly scared about what's going to happen vis-a-vis prosecutions. But I think a lot of people are scared, and I think they want cover. And if you notice, they're making two simultaneous arguments. They want to use torture as this wedge issue, but at the same time, they want to say the Democrats signed off on it, which are sort of incompatible because they're really hedging their bets. They want to drag down everyone if anyone goes down.
Given all the restrictions on those briefings, the ones that Boehner made sound like they were, he used downloaded, like this was a website that people could go to. Even if Democrats did know in this entirely Republican-controlled era of our government and the secrecy levels that are maintained at these meetings, what kind of jeopardy are they in either legally or politically?
You know, the answer to that is we just don't know. I mean, I'm inclined to believe Speaker Pelosi over John Boehner, but to be honest, I don't really care from a partisan standpoint who signed off on this. You know, I mean, let it all be brought to light. I mean, if it is the case that there were Democratic lawmakers who knew what was happening and gave it the thumbs up, whether tacit or explicit, we should know about that. Like, we should know about everything. I mean, there's been some amazing heroic reporting that's been done on this, but the fact of the matter remains, because of things are classified, because they're shrouded in secrecy, there's just a lot about it that we don't know.
We talked a lot about the Republican lack of vision on the economy. What about lack of vision on torture? I mean, we've heard this library tower thing trotted out, and unfortunately it doesn't match your average American calendar. What kind of coordinated strategic response have we seen so far?
You know, I think at a certain level, this is actually one of the debates they've been most effective with, frankly and sadly, because every time that I read about the, quote, debate about torture, I think the torturers are winning. and to the extent that they have succeeded, and one of the reasons I think we need some kind of prosecution and accountability and sunshine is that they have succeeded in sort of breaking the seal on what was settled, what was a taboo, and they have normalized something awful. And to the extent that we don't actually look that in the face and we bring people to account, that is going to remain no matter what the actual policy is.
Well said. Chris Hayes of The Nation. Many thanks as always, Chris.
Thank you, Keith.